Hello and welcome to the Avrum Rosensweig Show. This edition of the show with Michal Horowitz is proudly sponsored by Fogler Rubinoff and Joseph Fried Professional Corporation. Fogler Rubinoff has earned a reputation for legal excellence and dedicated client service. Joseph Fried Professional Corp is recognized for trusted professional counsel and a commitment to helping clients navigate important decisions with confidence. Their support helps bring meaningful conversation and compelling voices to audience across Canada and beyond. Our thanks to Fogler Rubinoff and Joseph Fried Professional Corp for making this broadcast possible. Welcome to the show, folks. My name is Avrum Rosensweig. There are some books that inform, there are others that inspire, and then there are those rare books that have the power to change the way we see other people and ourselves. Today's guest is the remarkable educator, speaker, and author Michal Horowitz. Welcome, Michal.
Thank you so much, Avrum. It's a pleasure to be here.
It's lovely to have you. Whose powerful new book, Able, Living with Disabilities, A Torah View, invites us into a deeply personal journey of resilience, faith, and human dignity. Born and raised in Toronto and trained as an audiologist, Michal began experience severe hearing loss as a young adult. What could have become a story defined by limitations instead became a story of extraordinary purpose. Through years of navigating life with significant hearing impairment, Michal discovered not only how to persevere and how to transform challenge into spiritual growth and to develop a profound Torah insight. In Abled, Michal weaves together memoir, Torah scholarship, and lived experience to explore how Judaism understands disability, human worth, inclusion, suffering, gratitude, and mostly faith. The book challenges us to reconsider our assumptions about what it means to be abled while offering a compassionate and deeply authentic voice to anyone who has faced adversity, difference, or struggle. In our conversation today, we'll discuss Michal's personal journey, which began in ninth grade in Israel when, quote, my damaged hearing was taking roots. We'll talk about the Torah perspective on disability and human dignity, the challenge of living in a hearing world, and the lessons all of us can learn about empathy, resilience, and seeing the image of God in every person. This is a conversation about courage. It is a conversation about faith. And ultimately, it is a conversation about what it truly means to live an abled life. Please welcome author, daughter, sibling, mother, grandmother, and teacher, an expert at sewing buttons, hems, and tears, and patching holes for her family. She has been called a Torah phenomenon. Ladies and gentlemen, Michal Horowitz. Welcome, Michal.
Thank you so
How are you?
much.
How are you?
Good. I'm excited and I'm honored to be here to share with you. Thank you for your beautiful introduction. Beautiful.
You are welcome. I am very honored to have you as well. And a lot of that has to do with our families go way back. So there's a friendship there.
Very much so. I still remember at your sister's apartment, what it looks like. We lived in Israel, ninth grade, which you mentioned, when my hearing loss journey really began. And I was very good friends with your niece Miriam. I used to go over to the apartment. I still see in my mind's eye what it looks like. I still remember the pot. I think it was chicken soup, Erev Shabbat. Yeah, it's a long time.
Yeah, we go way back. The other thing that interests me greatly is, as I mentioned to you before, I do a Parsha Shir on Thursday night, which is a Torah class on the Torah portion every week. And in reading your book, I learned a lot of things which I'm going to share. I think that there is a sort of a camaraderie there, something that we have in common, which is a deep love of Torah, right?
Very, very, very much so. My life and what I feel has become my humble mission is not only do I love Torah, but I love for others to see the world, the modern world that we live in. I'm talking about 2026 through the lens of Torah. And when you really love Torah and you want to take its messages for relevance in our day and age, it really changes your whole outlook into the world, into relationships and connectivity with God, into your own spirituality and finding your soul, your voice, your mission, and understanding how the wisdom of ancient Torah guides us through the struggles that we face today. I wish I could join your Zoom. I also teach Thursday nights. We discussed this. So if I'm ever not teaching Thursday nights, I would like to take you up on your invitation and join your Parsha class.
Yes, thank you. And I've been listening to some of your shiurim and you've been called a Torah phenomenon. Are you comfortable with that label?
The Torah is a phenomenon.
It's in reference to you, though.
I know. I'm not sure. People tell me I love you. I say you love Torah. That's what you love. You just need to find the voice that speaks to you in a meaningful way.
So, but with that, Michal, one of the things I was wondering about how your perspective on your Torah journey.
Mhm.
Um, how is your Torah journey being different than most religious women?
Okay, that's a very good question. And it's an interesting question. When I was in grade school in Toronto, I went to Eitz Chaim Elementary School, and then ninth grade I was in Israel, 10th, 11th, 12th, I was in Beis Yaakov. And then Michala for my gap year program is very, very studious, very academic, very serious, very hardworking. All my notebooks, like red line, underline the heading, Roman numeral one, Roman numeral two, very, very studious, high achiever. And then after Michal, I got married quickly after. Thank God my husband Moshe and I met in Israel. I married when I was very young. And there was a period of time when I was very busy, both with challenges, numerous challenges, and raising young children and confronting my own challenges that I really stopped learning for that period of time. And it's my challenges that brought me back to start, seeking for truth and meaning. So I didn't neglect, God forbid, for myself, Judaism or a Torah life ever, but I was more living, I think you could say, on autopilot. I was just doing what I had to do, what I needed to do. We were in high school, we were in seminary, running a religiously observant home. But I was so busy physically, emotionally, and time-wise with so many myriad challenges that I didn't make time for my own learning and my own growth through connectivity of Torah. But once I started again, um, it must have been like 2012 or so, personal learning, it really transformed my life. And thank God, the life of the thousands of people around the world who learn with me. So I don't know if it's so different than other religious women. I don't know if that was my journey.
Are you deeply proud of what you've accomplished in the area of Torah to date?
Am I what in the area of
Are you
Torah today?
are you deeply proud of yourself for what you've accomplished in the area of Torah?
I am deeply humbled and overwhelmed by what I feel is a tafkid, a purpose that the Almighty has given me to share the divine wisdom with others. I regularly receive emails from people all around the world who learn with me. I'll be like random places when people are like, "Are you Michal Horowitz? I recognize your voice," because they listen to me online. I've lectured in Israel on a regular basis. I've lectured in London, across the US, Canada. I am proud of how much people love learning
Mhm.
when they see that the Torah is relevant to them as a modern Jew in today's world. I am humbled. I sometimes I look at myself, I'm like, how did this happen?
Yeah, right,
um,
right.
I'm grateful. I'm grateful and very deeply grateful. And it's a zchut, it's a privilege and a merit to be that voice for people.
You close your eyes when you speak, you know?
You don't want to hear a funny story?
Yeah.
One time a few years ago, I know, one time a few years ago, I was speaking at a woman had for her, it was quite some years ago, a woman had like it was her mother's yurt site. So she had a personal chef. So she combined like kamach and Torah, bread, sustenance with Torah. So she had a personal chef doing a demonstration. They served them, yeah. And then she had me to be the speaker. So I was in the middle of the dinner that they were serving. And I don't remember what I was talking about, but I was saying something very passionate. So my eyes were closed and I didn't know they were serving dessert. And I didn't know they put down in front of me a hot chocolate souffle. And sometimes for emphasis, I also go like, ah. I dropped the phone, Avram. Sorry, viewers. I banged my hand down on the table for emphasis and I went straight into the hot chocolate souffle. It was funny. It was funny. I know. And I don't know. I don't do it on purpose. Someone once asked me if I went to acting school. I said, no, I didn't go to acting school.
You know, when you watch singers on stage, it's not unusual whatsoever that when they're singing and they become very passionate about their singing, whether they're in front of 10 people or 20,000 people, they
Right.
will shut their eyes and they will go off into a zone.
I was speaking in Denver once, and a woman brought her young granddaughter. I think the granddaughter was in seventh grade. She came over to me after, I promise. And she looked at me, this young child, and she said, you dance when you talk.
Ah, that is lovely.
I said to her, that's because Torah is a song. That's what she said, a young child. She said, you dance when you talk.
That's
I
lovely.
don't really dance here. Listen, it's inspiring, it's moving.
Michal, I know your parents, and they're very impressive people. Your mother's not well; she should be well.
Amen.
Um, your father's a pretty auspicious guy, both when it comes to law and his passion for the Jewish people in Israel. How much of where you're at in life, in terms of your Torah knowledge, in terms of your teaching,
Mhm.
do you attribute to your parents?
So we grew up in a very family oriented home, not only with the immediate family, with aunts, uncles, cousins. That was a very, very, very important value, which is something that I try and bring into my own home and transmit to the next generation. My father also is about tzedakah, giving to many different charitable organizations. That's another value that we try and transmit the importance of giving of yourself to others, whether it's monetarily or time or heart or an ear. We also grew up in a home that was very, very proud of the nation of Israel and the state of Israel, and that's certainly something that we also try very much to transmit to our children. So I think a lot of my foundational values really were brought to me in the home. Also, my father has a very extensive library. Although I remember when I was younger, I would like pick up a book of Rav Soloveitchik and I would be like, I don't understand what this is saying. Or
Yeah.
the older edition of Rav Shamshon Fal Hirsch on Chumash, the like blue one. I'm like, I don't understand. So now I have it's actually right here. I'll happens to be on the table. Rav Hirsch on Chumash. And I quote the Rav tremendously. And I consider myself a Talmidav the Rav, but I would say that the foundations and those values, family, charity, and chesed, and love for the state of Israel, is really a foundation of my home and my chinuch, my education growing up.
Michal, do you remember when you went back to the Sephorim, when you went back to the writers that you could not understand, as you just described, and then all of a sudden you started to get them? Do you remember that point?
I don't remember. I think it was like just an organic, natural process that sort of happened once I went back to learning. And also, I was older, with maturity, with life experience, and with age. Hopefully, we develop an intuition and a wisdom that we did not have when we were younger.
Yes, yes.
I can
I
appreciate them more and understand them.
I was, as I said, I'm fascinated by your book, which is in the corner there. People can order it on Amazon and other major outlets. Well worth reading, and I encourage people to buy it. We learned through your book that really at a very early age, somewhere around 18 or 19, you started to realize that something wasn't right with your hearing.
Right.
Now, there's two pieces here. Number one is you heard perfectly fine, right? Up until that point, or at least as you saw it. And the second point was all of a sudden, something didn't feel right. Do you want to walk us through that
Yeah,
time?
sure. So I was, thank God, born with normal hearing, thank God, which is why my speech and language is also so good.
Yeah.
And when we were in Israel, I was in ninth grade. So I guess it was a 1991 school year. I was about 13 or so. I had some dizzy spells, which I describe in Abled, and some vertigo spells. And I only, unbeknownst to me, the vestibular balance system and the hearing system are in the same place in the inner ear. And the dizzy spells passed, thank God. I thank God do not have an issue with vertigo, but which can be quite debilitating for those who suffer with it. But it affected my hearing in my inner ear. It affected my hair cells, which are they're not, they look like little hairs weaving in fluid all the way in the inner ear. And they were damaged. I was in so when we came back to Toronto, I was like in 10th grade, 11th grade. I was still compensating. It was still a mild hearing loss. I started to notice like I was missing things, but again, I was very studious. I followed carefully in class. It progressed over time. And when I was about 23, so about 10 years after the original onset, that's when I finally went for help. So it wasn't like a shock, when I went to the audiologist, who was my professor in Brooklyn College, Professor Michal B. Emmer, and she did a hearing test on me. It wasn't like a shocking situation or like, what do you mean I have the hearing loss? Because over those 10 years, I had come to recognize that something was wrong. I'll tell you something amazing. Somebody reached out to me after reading Abled. Gotten feedback from people, readers all over. And she said she actually suspects that something is wrong with her hearing, an adult. And she has never really done anything about it. She didn't have the courage. And because she read Abled, she messaged me that she made herself an appointment with an audiologist. And someone else, actually, totally someone else from a totally different place, told me the same thing, that it connected with her and it gave her the courage. It's hard when you're a young person. I'm saying, like, I don't know, I think I'm young, even though I'm turning 50 soon. When you're a young person,
Wonderful.
I think hearing loss used to be associated with, elderly or like grandmothers who were like not today's generation, much older. I remember when we were in school, Professor Rochelle Cherry, there used to be a stigma against glasses. I mean, we were both wearing glasses. And the saying was, I don't know, boys don't make passes at girls who wear glasses. Did you ever hear that?
No.
Yeah, must have been back in the day. So nobody wants to feel impaired. No one wants to feel excluded. No one wants to feel different. No one wants to feel disabled. But the truth is, especially with hearing loss, trying to hide it usually doesn't work. Because as soon as you're involved in a conversation, you're going to miss something depending on the degree. People are going to realize like either you don't have social skills or you're ignoring them or you're making up answers that don't make sense. I just find it's much easier to say, I have a severe hearing loss. It might be hard to communicate. I just put it out there.
How sad were you when you discovered that indeed you had hearing loss?
That's what I'm saying. I don't think I was sad. I think if anything, I was probably more like relieved that I knew what was going on and there was a name for it.
Yes, the reason why I asked about the sadness is because I've had 3 heart attacks. And after my first heart attack, I was sitting there on the couch and I was thinking to myself, I'm not having a heart attack. I'm fine.
Wow.
And it took me a while before I said to myself, I have to phone 911 because I don't want to be one of these guys who passes away on his couch.
Oh, wow.
I want to live. And then I went through the whole process. I was deeply saddened because I felt as though my body had betrayed me. And these are words from my sister Naomi. God bless her soul. She asked me, "Do you feel like that? Do you feel like your body's gone against you?" And I said yes. And I went into somewhat of depression for a while because it's normal to hear. It's normal to have a good heart, that your heart beats.
So how long ago was that?
My first heart attack was in 1996.
So you should continue to
And I was
live and be well and
amazing. Thank you.
inspire and do your good work and good health.
Yeah, thank you, Michal. Thank you.
I
Amazing.
can relate to what you said not in terms of my hearing loss, which is now severe, really severe to profound, but our youngest children are twin boys. They are now 20, thank God. Um, and they were 30 weekers. And out of nowhere, when I was expecting them, my water broke out of nowhere. We went to the hospital, they sent us home, we went back. They gave me drugs to, not drugs, they gave me medication to build up their lungs because they were quite premature still. And after about a week, they gave me very, very strong medication. I was completely like immobile and bed rest in the hospital. I delivered them. And what you're describing is really how I felt. I felt like it was my fault that they were premature. I couldn't keep them in longer. My body didn't do what it was supposed to do. I felt a tremendous sense of guilt that they had to, be in the NICU and face what they were facing because my body didn't work how it was supposed to. So in terms of my hearing loss, I didn't feel that. I think because again, it was over 10 years. But in terms of giving birth prematurely, and no one, what's interesting, because you said your sister, I didn't know your sister Naomi. I know Etsy and Chavi. I didn't know
Yes.
Naomi. Where did she live?
She lived here in
She
Toronto
lived.
with her husband,
Uh-huh.
Rabbi Benjamin Hecht, who was into Chinuch Nishma,
Uh-huh.
and he passed away as well after
Okay,
her.
the memory should be for a blessing.
Amen. Thank you.
And I stopped telling people because people didn't understand. They're like, no, you didn't do anything wrong. Why would you feel guilty? But like you say, your heart's supposed to work normally. Your ears are
Yeah.
supposed to hear. Your womb is supposed to carry till full term. So I can relate in terms of that aspect.
You have two children with hearing impairment?
What you ask me about my children? Yeah,
Yes,
yeah.
yes.
So we have one of those boys has cochlear implants, bilateral cochlear implants, which he he's okay that I speak about it and that I talk about it.
Is there
But
a certain
I'm
amount
interrupting you
of
for 1 second. He hears much better than me because he has cochlear implants and he does fantastic. He loves music. He hears much better. He wants me to get cochlear implants because he says, Mom, you're missing so much. You're going to do so much better. But I'm scared. That's the truth. I'm just scared. I'm hesitant. The evil you know is better than the one you don't know. I'm not saying cochlear implants are evil. They're a big blessing. But for me, I know how I function. I know I manage. I'm scared. Cochlear implants destroy whatever usable hearing is left.
yes,
Right.
yes. Michal, I'm sure you know this. In Toronto, there is a yeshiva for boys who have hearing disabilities who would be qualified as deaf. Is that an appropriate word to use? Deaf?
Yeah.
Is that a word that you use?
There's a yeshiva for boys who are deaf. You're asking me if that's an okay word?
Is deaf an okay word in the context of this interview? Yes.
I think so. I would not be considered fully deaf because I do have very minimal usable hearing. But someone who has no usable hearing, yes. And there is a
Okay.
yeshiva. Yeah, go ahead.
Yes. So I visited there a few times because I was fascinated by the place,
Hmm.
fascinated by the Rosh Yeshiva who has hearing impairment. And I asked the boys, the Bochum, I said to them, would you prefer having your hearing or being deaf? You know what their answer
Well,
was? By and large, their answer was they prefer being deaf. And I asked
why?
why. Why? And they said, because if we need to, we can shut out the world. So my question to you is there a certain camaraderie, a certain relationship between you and your son that your other children may not get?
Okay, so a couple of things I want to comment before I answer your very nice question. Rabbi Cocoon, who is the head of the yeshiva, gives an approbation. I don't know if you saw it in the approbations. He gives an approbation for Abelt. He is one of the rabbinic approbations, and he gives a michta bracha, a letter of blessing. It's in the front of Abelt. If you didn't see it, go
Yes.
back. I didn't know that you had a connection with
I
the
missed
yeshiva
it
and that
then.
you've spoken. You have he's one of the rabbinic approbations. He gave a beautiful haskama. I thought you were going to say, because I have thought of this, but this is not what you asked him. I thought you were going to say, would you rather be deaf or would you rather have your hearing or your sight? And for me, maybe it's because I don't have hearing, but I have sight. That's what I thought you were going to say. I'm so grateful for my sight. And I guess I can answer differently. I would rather have my sight than my hearing, but I guess that's just because the reality of my life. I'm not sure someone who's visually impaired or blind would say the same, but that's what I thought you were going to say. I've thought about it a lot because Helen Keller, of course, is the most famous example. I just read an article, I think in the new OU Jewish Action, about a group of deaf, blind individuals who were taken to Israel and how they communicate. So for me, I'm very grateful. I think losing a modality makes you appreciate so much the other modalities that we have that help us interact and see the world. I just wanted to comment on that. In terms of myself and my son who hears with two cochlear implants, Oh yeah, one more thing I'd say about taking it off at night. So it's true, my son could take out his cochlear implants and not hear. When I take out my hearing aids at night, that's it. I'm done. Sometimes it's nice to have quiet. When I travel on a plane, let's say we're going to Israel, it's a long flight. I just take them out. One time they got thrown in the garbage like that, but that was quite a moment.
Mhm.
But I don't think that we have a more special camaraderie or connection than myself with the other children. I don't know what my kids would say. I don't think so. Not because of the hearing impairment. I don't think so. Also, he functions much better than me.
Was there a point in your life where you were beginning to go through this process, already into it, knowing you lost much of your hearing and trying to do your best to fix it through hearing aids? Was there a point where you felt as though people who knew about your hearing impairment were kind of speaking around you at that point, not directly to you?
Do you mean like in a group conversation?
Let's say yes, yes.
Group conversations are ongoing, very challenging. No matter what decade I'm in or where I'm into in my hearing loss journey, sometimes individuals speak around me if there's a group, but it's not deliberate. It's because that's just how social camaraderie and friendships and social settings happen. And most people can follow the group conversation. Whereas for me, very often I find people are speaking around me, and I accept that I miss a lot of information. Group conversations are impossible for me, actually impossible.
Is there a particular loneliness that comes along with that?
Particularly what that comes along with it.
A loneliness that comes along with it.
I'm missing the word you're saying, Avram.
I had an uncle, Michal Meyer, who did not hear well at
Yeah.
all. There's hearing loss on my mother's side, and he would sit in the corner very much by himself because I'm not sure his hearing aids were very
Mhm.
good, but he was off into his own world. And I'm just wondering, when you're in a group and people are speaking and you're not picking up on
Right.
it or aspects of it, is there a loneliness with that?
Loneliness. Did you say loneliness?
Yeah,
Yeah, yeah.
loneliness.
Okay.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah.
Um, Sometimes it could feel like you're left out, but I know no one means it intentionally. It's rather just the nature of having a hearing loss. I write this in Able. That's something that's so helpful, especially as a degree of hearing impairment worsens, is one-to-one conversation. Like, your listeners might be listening to this podcast and they're thinking, her speech is perfect and she's communicating. Okay, I missed the word lonely, but I'm wearing two hearing aids, Para aids, and my it's connected to my Bluetooth. The audio is connected to my Bluetooth. Plus, I can see your face and I can see your lips, and it's a quiet environment and it's streaming right into my ears. So I'm not sure for myself that loneliness is the right word, but I would say maybe it can be isolating. I think there's a difference between loneliness and isolation. They could certainly, be partners. Someone who's lonely may feel isolated, but I don't know if someone who feels isolated is necessarily lonely in a social situation. It's very helpful if there's a large group conversation. If I speak to one person, they focus on me, then I can be included more.
Michal, have you ever been angry with God for this?
No,
Never?
I've had other challenges in my life where I don't know if angry is the right word, but more struggling to find purpose or mission. We've been through infertility, secondary infertility, and everything that entails. My husband, he should live and be well, quite some years ago, had cancer. He should live and be well. I gave birth prematurely to twins. One of them needed a surgery 48 hours after an emergency life-saving surgery. I was teaching a deaf child how to hear and speak. He had two surgeries for cochlear implants. we struggled financially, significantly financially for a time when my husband tried some different business ventures that didn't work well. I wasn't working yet, especially because it was at the time that we were teaching my son how to hear and speak. So the hearing loss is part of who I am, and I don't know. It's just part of who I am. It's my life. It's who I am.
So I hear that. I hear that. But are there times where you philosophize, where you sort of go into that existential place and think, perhaps God gave me this? Is there a
So
reason why God?
I think that everybody in life at different points in our struggles wonders why. Um, Knowing that there's no answer to why. We ask it knowing we don't have an answer. By Joseph B. Soloveitchik, the Rav, may his memory be for a blessing, said, had Abram asked questions, he would have lost the right to become the father of the Ummah Yisraeli, the Jewish nation. Faith means not only to believe, but not to ask. That's a quote from the Rav. The Medrash Bereshit Rabbah, Medrash Genesis Rabbah tells us 56:10, Parasha Nun Vav Siman Yod, chapter 56, portion 10, tells us that when God told Abraham, the angel of God told Abraham in Genesis 22 not to slaughter his son. So the Medrash Genesis Rabbah tells us that Abraham said to God, you know, God, yesterday you told me through Isaac your offspring will be. Then you told me, take your son and slaughter him. Hayali mala shiv. I could have asked you a lot of questions, God. Veloa sisi kain. I didn't do so. El kavashti rachamai laso ritzoncha. I conquered my innate feelings of mercy for my child to do your will. Hayali mala shiv. I could have asked you questions. Veloa sisi kain. It didn't make sense. You told me, take your child, and you told me, now slaughter him. I don't know if it is the human experience for everybody or for every Jew. There are certainly times in my life when I say, why or what's the purpose here, or it's heavy to carry this burden. I think knowing that there are no answers and I have to pick myself up and say, God, I'm here in this world to make the world a better place, to serve you, to, be mitaking, to rectify my old soul.
There are many people throughout history who have accomplished a lot despite their hearing impairment, and some of them include, fascinatingly, Ludwig van Beethoven, who composed music despite the
Imagine,
fact that later on in his life, right, he couldn't hear.
imagine.
Helen Keller, Thomas Edison,
I don't think I knew that about
Peter,
Thomas Edison.
yes, the inventor of the phonograph and the light bulb. Peter Townsend. Have you ever heard of him? The group Who.
What's the name?
There's a rock group called the Who.
Maybe I've heard
That's
of it.
okay. That's okay. Bill Clinton, Rush Limbaugh, all have hearing
Oh,
loss.
that I know. He's
Profound.
famous, yeah. For having,
Yes.
he has
Yeah.
cochlear implants, right? Yeah.
Yes. That's correct. Yes. Yes. So, I don't mean to be crass, but you are in the company of some very, very great people, and I'm wondering, having hearing loss, has that propelled you forward in a certain way that you perhaps may not have gone forward
Right.
otherwise?
So I think that's a very good question. I think that the different situations and challenges that I have faced, hearing loss combined with those challenging times, have really shaped me into the person that I have become. There's a saying, sometimes people say it, it does not rest well with me. I intensely dislike this saying. And that saying is, God only gives challenges to people who can handle them. And when I speak, I counsel people, I say, never say that to anyone going through a challenge. If you like it and it works for you, fine. Don't say it to
I
others.
agree.
But
Yes.
I read a number of years ago a letter to the editor in Family First, which is part of Mishpacha magazine. A woman from the Maryland area wrote in a letter to the editor, and she wrote that she lost her teenage child to suicide. The child took their own life, and she wrote that phrase really does not rest well with her, but instead she prefers the phrase, God gives us challenges, and along the way we become people who can handle them. For me, I think that's very profound. And again, maybe some people can't relate to that, and maybe some people, don't find comfort in there. I have been shaped by the different situations of my life. And I don't think I'm unique. I think we come to this world and everybody carries things. Everybody carries things. For me, it's mine. For you, it's yours. For your listeners, it's theirs. Everyone carries something.
Well, what was a great quote by Rabbi Soloveitchik? It was in the book that God didn't give people everything. You know,
There's
we
no
all have.
such thing as the sun always shines for a person. If he thinks
Yeah,
so, he is
yeah,
mistaken. Much of what I've learned
that's
from
right.
the, it's funny you mentioned it from the book. Much of what I've learned from the Rav, please God, he should continue to Adam da us endow me with the wisdom. I remember, it's funny, specifically brought that up. I remember which Sefer of the Rav, which book of the Rav I've read it in. I have about 40 different Sfarim of the Rav. I tend to remember where I read it. And when I was writing Abel, I could not remember which Sefer that was from. So I
Okay.
reached out to a couple of different editors or compilers of the works of the Rav. And then I reached out to Rabbi David Holzer. I said, I think this is in one of your books, but where is it? Because I couldn't quote, I don't want to quote it otherwise. And he gave me the source. So that specific quote, I needed a guidance. I reached out to Rabbi Holzer, who told me where it was. And then I was able to quote where it was from.
Do you underline and mark up your forum, your books?
You want to see?
I do too. Yeah, sure.
Okay.
Yeah. Well, why don't I do this while Michal walked away? This edition of the Avrum Rosensweig Show is presented by Fogler Rubinoff and Joseph Fried Professional Corporation. Success is built on trust, expertise, and relationships, value shared by both of our sponsors. Whether serving clients, supporting communities, or championing excellence in their fields, Fogler Rubinoff and Joseph Fried Professional Corp continue to make a meaningful impact. We're very grateful for their partnership and support. And we return to our guest, Michal Horowitz. Yeah,
Thank
show
you.
me.
Okay, so for example, this is the Rav thinking aloud on the Parsha Bamidbar. So as I
Yes, yes.
read, can you see?
Ah, yes, yes.
These are the white pages in the back. I always say Bishvili Divrei Olam, the world was created for me. These white pages are for me. So as
Very nice.
this is one sefer. I just picked up two Sfarim, two books randomly for myself. This is another one. I write the page and the insight so that, but as Hashem with God's help, I remember which sefer it's from. I don't remember which page it's from. So if I remember the book, then I go to the back and I have my own notes and it directs me to the page I need.
And I will tell you, Michal, that my father, God bless his soul, he had 10,000 books for him. He wasn't an effusive character. He didn't come from the generation where he would sit down and tell us who he is, his innermost feelings and thoughts. He was a rabbi and he was a Talmud Chacham and he loved to study. And you know what his legacy was to me and my siblings is the underlining in his forum in his books
There you
that
go.
he left us. Yeah.
There you go.
The other thing too you might want to consider when I started reading your book, Abled, I wrote down Avrum Rosensweig from Yeshiva. We used to write La Hashem Aretzum Loa. This is from God. And then I would write the date that I started the book and the date I finished the book.
Wow.
So it gives a context to the next person who picks it up.
That's so nice.
Yeah.
I'll show you
Yeah.
one more from Rabbi Riskin, for example. So this is I risk listening to God, inspirational stories for my grandchildren. This is the inside cover, which is why it's
Lovely.
very hard for me. I really don't lend out my books because I never know which sefer, which book I'm going to need when I'm preparing my different shir, my different lectures. So I'm very, very hesitant to lend out, not because I don't want to share, but because I can't. First off, they get lost. It's not simply a matter of replacing them. Could replace the book. I can't replace all the work that that's gone into the book, the hours of work that's gone into the book, and also I never know when I'm going to need them.
You are a true bibliophile. You know that.
Yeah, I know. I never thought of that.
You are. Oh yeah, you're a true bibliophile. Do you ever smell the books? You ever smell yours for him?
Do I ever?
Like pick them up and smell them?
No. The other day it
I
was
have friends
raining, and
who
me and my kids said we can smell the rain. I'll show you one of my Nah, this is Ktuvim because I teach for the OU, a lot of teaching for the OU, and one of the something they do is called Nachyomi, which is a daily chapter of
Yes,
scriptures
yes,
every day. So I'll show you, like, and here are the different. This is a page from Mishlei, for example, because you spoke about highlighting. I don't know if you could see the highlighting, but this is actually in the
yes,
Tanakh. There's yellow highlight, there's
yes.
purple pen. So yeah, there, actually, Rashi says on Ethics of Our Fathers, Pirkei Avot, "Aseh lecha rav uknei lecha chaver," in chapter 1 of Ethics of Our Fathers, make for yourself a teacher and acquire for yourself a friend. And Rashi says there in his commentary, acquire for yourself a friend, those are Sfarim. Those are books that a
Yeah, that's
person
lovely. Isn't that
learns
lovely?
from.
Yes. Michal, I want to dive into Torah a little bit. There is a very difficult pasuk in Leviticus. It's 19:14, which states, "You shall not curse the deaf." That is understood by the rabbis not only literally, but as a commandment to protect the dignity of vulnerable people generally. Curious why God chose the deaf, if that was the case.
Right, because Rashi says, or hu adin l'chol adam. It's really Rashi, quoting the sage, just says it's the practice for everybody. You're not allowed to curse anyway, but the Torah speaks of what is more common. That's a very nice question. Why would the Torah specifically speak about a cheresh, a deaf, lo sakal a cheresh, not to curse specifically a deaf person? If it's for everybody, so why shouldn't the Torah just say, "Don't curse people"? Is that your question, Avram?
Yeah. It could have also said, "Don't curse the blind."
So it does say "Lifnei ivri lo sitein mechsel," before a blind
It's
person, don't
true.
put a
Yes.
stumbling block. So that is another variation on be attentive to the needs of the blind. So that doesn't bother me as much. More if you can't curse anyone, so just write "don't curse." Perhaps the reason is, it's a good question. I don't know. If I was teaching this class, I would ask my students first, "What are your thoughts?" before I say my thoughts. So my tendency is to ask you, "What are your thoughts?" But you're actually teaching the class, so I'm
I do that too. I do that too, by
Oh
the way.
yeah.
Yes.
So when a person can hear, and again, we live in a day and age today with the blessing of medicine and technology, when deaf people who choose to be hearing, there's also deaf with a capital D community, and that's a different community. They sign, they don't always have aid, meaning they're not aided or necessarily cochlear implants. But when a hearing impaired person in today's society wants to be part of society with the technologies we have, that's much more possible than it really was ever in history until more recent times. Maybe because a deaf person can be such an easy target as they go through life deaf. They can't defend themselves. They can't hear what's going on. They seem to be isolated. They used to put them in sanatoriums, I think, because they thought that they had no intelligence. So a deaf person is emblematic, especially in biblical or the time of the sages, as someone who, a cherish is pater from mitzvahs. A cherish, a deaf person, is exempt from performing the commandments, but that's not the case today. So I think in the times of the sages viewed a deaf person as someone who's really excluded from society and someone who is not able to function up to par with everybody else. And maybe that leaves room for the stronger to prey on the weak. Sadly, it's very sad. And perhaps that's why the sages, the Torah specifically comments on do not curse a deaf person. I don't know. What are your thoughts?
So let me tell you my thoughts with another question, okay? As someone who has profound hearing loss and has experienced what it's like to be deaf, what don't you have?
What don't I have?
What don't you have that I have
You mean in terms of hearing or in terms of life?
in your life? In your life,
Right. So I don't think, I don't have hearing, so I lack a lot of camaraderie in communicative, demanding situations such as social environments, whether it's a restaurant, a Shabbat meal, a gathering of people. But
yes.
because of my hearing, I really don't feel, thank God, it distances, like I said before, it can be isolating. But sometimes people are isolated from others because they lack social skills or an emotional deficiency or something physical. I don't think my life is so unique because of my severe hearing loss. Because, like we said before, like the Rav says, there's no such thing as the sun. Everyone carries something that makes them somewhat different or lacking than someone else in some respect.
Yeah. I like your answer, by the way, as to why the Torah specifically says you shall not curse the deaf. You're right, because there is an isolationist component to that, and they are very vulnerable, as you
That's
said.
what I think.
You know,
I also,
in your
yeah,
go
go
ahead.
ahead.
Yes. In your Sefer, you comment about a number of the different biblical characters. Um, One of the psukim that we find in Shemot, which is who gives a person a mouth or who makes one mute or deaf. This is God speaking to Moshe.
Right.
God says this to Moshe during the burning bush encounter.
Mhm.
The verse emphasizes that every human condition exists within divine creation and purpose. That's a fascinating thought, isn't it?
That it's from God.
Not only is it from God, I mean, inherent to this idea, Michal, is, let's say, to be maybe a little romantic here in terms of the Torah learning, is that when God created you, and you quote the Lubavitcher Rebbe, who said, Zacharinu Livracha, that on the day God created you, he decided that the world couldn't live without you. It's a beautiful thought.
Beautiful.
Now, let's take that a bit further and tell me if this resonates or not. When God decided to create Michal Horowitz, he decided to create her with hearing loss, right?
Yeah,
As he did Moshe Rabbeinu, who had what's called a migam game, a stutter,
right.
right? Interesting thought, isn't it?
It is an interesting thought. It's how I try and live my life of faith, knowing that God chose me to have this and it helps shape me into the person I am. Tell you something beautiful. I just saw this last week for the first time. It's very famous. The Kotzker Rebbe, Rabbi Menachem Mendel Mikotz, the 1700s, but everybody says it. We have two pockets. In one pocket, we carry a piece of paper, proverbially,
Mm.
Bishvili Nivra Ha'olam, the whole world was created for me. And the other pocket, we carry paper that says, Anochi Offer Ve'ever, I am but dust and ashes. Bishvili Nivra Ha'olam is from the Babylonian Talmud, Sanhedrin, Tractate Sanhedrin, folio 37a. And Anochi Offer Ve'ever is from Genesis, when Abraham was praying to God to spare the towns of Sodom and Gomorrah. He said, I've just begun to speak, I am dust and ashes. And this represents the balance. We each need to feel, on the one hand, the whole world was created for me. I have a purpose, like the Lubavitcher Rebbe says, I quote enabled, the day you were born is the day God decided the world can't be without you. On the other hand, when sometimes, when a human being thinks of themselves vis-a-vis the infinite universe, the vastness of infinity and the power of the Almighty, a person realizes I'm but dust and ashes. Here today, the sages say, gone tomorrow. But I just read last week that the Sfas Emes, the Sfat Emet adds, Bishvili Nivra Ha'olam, read it as Bishvil Shali Nivra Ha'olam, for my path. Shvil, the Rambam, the Maimonides speaks about the golden median. The Shvil Hazahav, the
Yes.
golden path upon which a person should travel. Bishvil Shali, for my path, Nivra Ha'olam, the whole world was created, and it's so powerful and empowering. And everybody has a different path. Everyone has a different way, but for that path where God decided you should be on, for that the world was created. Our responsibility, of course, Rav Soloveitchik says everyone has a tafkid. Not everyone knows what their tafkid is. That's a different story, but everyone has a mission. And our achrayut, our responsibility and our privilege, our zchut, is to try to identify our abilities within our disabilities and become the best person that I can be.
I heard a psychologist take that exact point and reposition it just a tad. And basically, what he said like this is, when you're feeling very, very badly about yourself, when you're feeling down, you're feeling negatively about who am I, what have I done, I can't do this, I can't do that. Remember that God created you in his image. And if God created you in his image, there must be something very special
That's
about you.
exactly. It's hard for us sometimes to. It's hard for people to accept that sometimes when they're going through a challenge.
Yes.
It's important to remember it's a truism of life and creation, but it's hard to sometimes remember that.
Michal, you're very conscious of the moments that somebody is suffering, aren't you? And not to come up with platitudes. You've said that twice in this interview.
What did I say twice?
Twice in this interview, you basically said is don't say to people, God doesn't give you a task or an onerous, a heavy weight on your shoulders that you can't carry when they're, especially when they're going through it. And you mentioned that now and a few minutes ago, and I'm wondering why you're so aware of that. How did you come across that?
Aware of which point, Avram? That I'm so aware of what? I'm not.
Yeah, you're very aware of the fact that when people are suffering terribly, at the moment they're suffering, don't hurl platitudes at them. Right?
Right.
Right.
The sages say in Ethics of Our Fathers, "Al tenachameu b'sha'ar shemeto muta lefanav." Don't comfort a person at the time the deceased lies before them. While that
Yeah.
has halachic implications in terms of Jewish halacha, it also has great hashkafic um, connotations in how we view others and live our lives. When a person is going through a challenge, that's not the moment to comfort them. That's not the moment to say it's all for the best. It's not the moment to say God loves you so much. It's to
Yes.
be there and feel. And I think I appreciate what you said. I teach all ages. Actually, all ages. I lecture in schools, elementary, mid. I just spoke in a middle school in Great Neck, New York, Har Torah before Chag HaShavuot. And I teach individuals who are, I'm not exaggerating, 90s and 100 years old every week, and everyone in between. I teach beginner level classes and very advanced text-based classes. And people speak to me. I'm the only one carrying challenges. Everyone carries challenges. People come to me. People speak to me. If the Torah does not increase our sensitivity to feeling the plight of our fellow, then we're doing something very wrong. The verse in Proverbs says, "Doachel darchei noam." The path of Torah is the way of pleasantness, and all of her paths are paths of peace. So I think the merit that I have of teaching for the past 15 and a half years and choosing, with the help of God, to immerse myself in Torah living and Torah learning has helped shape not only my connection with God, but I try to have sensitivity to others. I've been places where I've spoken, especially in Orthodox communities, and I never speak unless I'm asked to or given a title. I'm not talking about that situation. If it's a general lecture open to the public, it's always going to be universal. I never speak only to married women. I never speak, unless again, I'm hired specifically to give a lecture to married women. I don't need that. General. I never speak only about the Torah as mothers. I never speak only about someone who is, doing what is typically expected in a certain community. So if I'm teaching on chinuch, passing on education, morals, values, ethics to the next generation, I will always say this is true of parents to children. It's true of teachers to students. It's true of our nieces and nephews. It's true in how we behave and people who see us outside, because that's the truth. People don't fit into a narrow category, and we need to, the sages say in Ethics of Our Fathers, to carry the burden with our fellow. And part of that is being more sensitive and a heightened sensitivity to feeling the pain of those around us, trying to alleviate and validate and carry that and give them your heart. So I try very hard. I try very hard to be sensitive to the different situations that people face in life. I don't only teach married people. I don't only teach parents. I don't only teach, Haredim. I don't only teach non-Orthodox. I don't only teach people who are not religious. I teach the entire spectrum, and Torah is for everybody. What I was gonna say is I've been places where single women come over to me and they say, "Thank you for this has happened to me on more than one occasion. Thank you for including us in the lecture. We're so often forgotten."
It's lovely. I want to pick up on the idea of who you speak to and who you teach. You mentioned mothers.
Yes.
And here's what you say in the book on page 51. Because behind every handicapped child with any degree of success, and for every child that degree varies greatly, it is his mother. And that brought tears to my eyes
Thank you.
because I watched my son's mother and her sensitivity for Noah, a particular type of sensitivity that I don't have. My sensitivity is more, come on, Noah, pick it up, right? Stand, get above the water. You can do it. Where she looks into his soul and she sees something entirely different than I do. You,
So, yeah,
yes,
go ahead.
no, that I'm leaving that with you.
I think that there's a reason, Avram, I have to tell you something, I'm 12% battery. I need to move to where I have a charger or we're going to
Okay,
get cut off.
okay,
Is that okay? I
yeah.
have
We
to.
we have about 5 minutes left, by the way.
5 minutes left. Okay, fine. I should be okay. I'm on 12%. Okay, but if we have 5 minutes left, should be okay. When the first woman was created, and I don't call her Chava, I don't call her Eve till the end of chapter 2. Anything that happens pre chapter 2, verse 21, she is the woman. After, she becomes her name. When the first woman was created, it's very interesting. I'm fascinated by biblical Hebrew root words. I spend a lot of time discussing that in my teachings and my own self-study. When Adam was created in Genesis 1:27 and then in Genesis 2:7, the verbs used to describe his creation are vayivra, Genesis 1:27, God, and God created, Bria. Genesis 2:7, Vayitzar Hashem Elokim es Adam, God Elokim fashioned the man. God Elokim took dust and a soil and fashioned man. But when the woman was created, Genesis 2:22, it says Vayivein Vav Yud Bet Nun, and God built the side bone that he took from the man into the woman, and he brought her to the man. Vayivein is a root, a two-letter root, Bet Nun, that means to build, but it's also the root of the biblical word for understanding, Bina, Chabad. We mentioned the Bavitcher before. Chabad is an acronym for Chachma, Bina, and Da, three different levels of wisdom, intuition, and knowledge. And the Gemara, the Babylonian Talmud in Tractate Nida, folio 45b, asks why by woman is Bina, Vayiven, instead of, and he created or he fashioned, he built. Because built is the same word as intuition. And the Gemara, the Talmud says there, Bina Yetera Natna Liisha Yoter Mibiish. Women were given a greater degree of intuition and understanding more than the men. And you see it in the animal kingdom as well. There are some exceptions, but in general, in the mammal kingdom, in the alligators, actually not only mammals, it's the mother who takes care of the children. And that's why the womb is called a rechem. The womb in biblical Hebrew, resh chat mem, rechem, is the same root as rachamim, mercy. Hashem endowed the biblical mother with a degree of intuition, with a degree of compassion from her formation, vayiven, bina, her intuition, rechem, womb, rachamim, mercy, to allow her to not only create the child within herself, but to nurture, to understand, to have compassion on, to love the child in a way that another cannot. And it's a godly given gift from the Almighty to a mother.
What is the gift to the father?
The father, I think, has a different relationship with the children. The father in the biblical model should be a mainstay in the home. Rav Soloveitchik says the father teaches the generations how to observe the law, how to keep the mitzvot. The mother teaches the generations that there is a feeling, a passion, a warmth, and a depth for mitzvot. Zachor, the male, is the same shows as to remember, because through this child, this Zachor, the child, the seed, there's a remembrance of the past generations. Moses says in the book of Deuteronomy 32:7, Zachor Yemot Olam, remember the days gone by. Binu Shnot Darvador, build upon the years from generation to generation. Ask your father, you will tell you, or elder, you will say to you. It is the father's responsibility to transmit the law giving, the Torah, to teach the child, to give strength to the home, to bring a stability and a male wisdom to the home. And the mother adds a warmth. Now, there, of course, the lines are blurred. Sometimes you have a mother who fulfills that role more and a father who fulfills that more. But in general, from the time of creation, man and woman, father and mother, was endowed with different kochot. But Rav Soloveitchik says the biblical father, once the biblical mother passes on, the rule of the biblical father has ended. When Sarah dies in Genesis 23, Abraham's story is over. Right away we go to Yitzchak. When Yitzchak and Rivka, when they're together, their story's finished. We move on to Jacob. When Rachel dies, we move on to Joseph, because Rav Soloveitchik says without the biblical mother, the biblical father no longer has a role, and he steps out of the limelight.
What is that inside of you when you quote Rav Soloveitchik and other quotes within Torah? You smile a lot. Well, what is that inside of you?
Avrum, I have to go on. We're gonna get cut off, okay?
Yeah, go.
Okay. I was charged before, but I guess it's just using more power than I anticipated.
No, that's okay.
Okay, now your viewers will view my kitchen. 1 second, I got a charge. And I'm just gonna close the door. Oh, no, that's not the door, that's my living room. I love it's funny because someone just reached out to me earlier today on Instagram direct messaging, and she said that she loves when I quote the Rav because her brother, who is a well-known author, rabbi, teacher, was a student of the Rav, and he often quotes Rav. She loves when I quote the Rav. So I just wrote to her today. I just said, the Rav has really shaped my outlook on life, my passion for Torah, my understanding of our connection with God, my understanding of the biblical narratives and the biblical personalities. What is our role here and who we are as a person? I once told my husband, Avrum, I said, I consider myself a Talmidah of the Rav. My husband said, Michal, don't tell that to the Rav's Talmidim. But then I found when we were flying to London 3 years ago, I was reading a book of the Rav on ethics of the fathers, and he says in there that a Rav, a teacher, can be through Sfarim, through books, even if the student and teacher have never met. I showed it to my husband. I said, you see, I'm a Talmidah of the Rav. So I smile because I love Torah. If I'm teaching something that I love, I guess I naturally smile, and I love the Rav's teachings.
And you love ideas.
Do I have ideas?
No, you love ideas.
Meaning what?
I find that people who love Torah, many people, not all people, they appreciate a good thought, whether it be in the secular world or otherwise. If someone comes up with a good chap, as we call it in the yeshiva world, you can really appreciate a good chap, right?
Yeah. I get there. Sometimes, just Shabbat the other week, I was sitting at the table. I was just like, and one of the kids is like, Mom, what's wrong? And the other one said, she's having like a Torah aha moment. I said, yes. You dance when you talk.
So my last question to you is, I listened to Shiurim classes by Rav Asher Weiss. He's considered to be one of the world's greatest Ravs, teachers in the world. You're familiar with Rav Asher Weiss.
Yeah.
And whenever he quotes something from the Torah, Chumash, Tanakh, Gemara, whatever it happens to be, he'll tell you exactly where it is. And you do the same thing. For our listeners who don't perhaps learn a lot or are not accustomed to learning in a particular way, why is it that you always quote the source of your thoughts, your ideas?
Always. Can I tell you a cute anecdote about that before I answer your question? Many years after I was married, I was visiting Toronto again. And I think at that point I was already teaching. And I met the woman who was my college class teacher. She taught me the laws of Jewish family purity when I was engaged. I was 19 years old. And she told me she would come home and she said to her husband, I never had a call. I never had a bride like this before. Everything I teach her, she says to me, but what's the source?
Yes.
A couple of reasons. First, I don't want credit for something that's not my thought. The credit needs to be given to the one who said it. And the sages say in Ethics of Our Fathers, there are 48 traits by which Torah is acquired in chapter 6. And the last one is called Omer Davar B'Shem Omru. Whoever says something in the name of the one who said it, Mevi Gu'u Olam, brings redemption to the world. It's such an interesting teaching. You might wonder, like, if I say something in the name of someone who said, I'm going to bring redemption to the world, the turbulence that we live in. Why? You want to hear what I think, or there's no time?
Yeah, no, please go ahead.
So I think because saying something in the name of one who said it is a sign of not wanting credit for myself. It's a sign of humility to say, this is not my thought. This is the thought of the Talmud. This is the thought of the Midrash. This is the thought of Rav Soloveitchik. This is the thought of Rav Shamshon Falhirsch. There's a thought of Rav Asher Weiss. And we know that the temple was destroyed, the second temple, the Babylonian Talmud tractate Yuma, folio 9b, tells us the second temple was destroyed because of baseless hatred. We know the students of Rabbi Akiva, tractate Yevamo, folio 62b, the students of Rabbi Akiva died because they didn't have honor. They didn't give respect to one another. So we see that lack of respect and lack of giving honor and love to our fellow human being brings destruction to the world. Therefore, when we say this is not mine, people could say, wow, that's an amazing thought. No, it's not my thought. I'm showing that I am deferring to somebody else. I'm giving honor and gratitude to the one who said it. And really, that's a sign of building up another, and it's a sign of loving one another, and it's a sign of respect. And perhaps that's why the sages explained that when we do that, we bring redemption, because of a lack of kavod, and sinah chinam, a lack of honor and baseless hatred, are what destroyed and brought exile. Then giving kavod, giving honor, attributing to the source, and showing love will turn around the process and maybe bring some peace and clarity and joy to our world.
That's lovely. Nice word. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Over the last few months, Michal, I have been working with AI and asking it to produce poems about my guests. So I have an ode to Michal Horowitz created by AI, and I'd like to read it to you.
Okay.
There are voices the world easily hears, strong voices, loud voices, celebrated voices. And then there are quieter souls who teach humanity how to truly listen. Welcome to our interview where stories become mirrors through which we rediscover one another. Today comes Michal Horowitz, a teacher, a mother, a grandmother, a woman who began losing sound while still a young girl in 9th grade in Israel, where silence first planted its roots inside her ears. Yet what could have become a life narrowed by limitations became instead a widening river of faith. In her remarkable book, Able, Living with a Disability, A Torah View, she asks difficult questions. What does it mean to hear? What does it mean to be whole? Can suffering become wisdom? Can silence become Torah? The verse whispers through centuries, do not curse the deaf. But Michal teaches something deeper, that every human being carries invisible battles, unheard fears, private ringing in the soul. Like Beethoven composing symphonies in silence, like Helen Keller touching the world through darkness, she transforms loss into sacred music. And perhaps true hearing has never belonged to the ears alone. Perhaps it belongs to the heart, to compassion, to dignity, to the courage of seeing the image of God in every human face.
Beautiful. It's my mission, seeing the image of God in every human face. They meet people with all kinds of this. Thank you. It's so nice. Will you send it to me?
I will.
They meet people with all kinds of differences, disabilities, abilities, people who don't think like us, people who don't see eye to eye with us, people bishvil shali nivra ha'olam. It's not our responsibility to be God and judge other people. It's our responsibility to be in the image of God and love other people.
You have a lot of love inside of you, don't you?
I have a lot of,
Love.
you know, in the approbations for abled. One of them is from Rabbi Cocoon, the Rosh Yeshiva of the Daf Yeshiva, Rabbi Shai Shachter, who is my rabbi. One of the things he wrote in his letter of approbation, he wrote about her unbridled Ahava Yisrael. I try. I'm not trying to say something nice about myself. I want others to be influenced. We spend so much time positively judging other people for their choices, their dress, their appearance, the group that they associate with. Why? We just bring divide to the world. We're so hard to forgive people. We look at a kippah or no kippah, a head covering or no head covering, right, left, this, that. We're always giving labels to people. Why can't we just see Hashem created all of us and B'Tselem Elokim Nivra Adam, an image of God, man was created, and the world would just be such a happier place if everyone could live by that. And it's the truism of Torah. Her ways are ways of pleasantness, and all her paths are paths of peace. And it's our responsibility. I might not be able to change the world, but I could certainly change myself.
You know, I really appreciate you, and I really like you, and I want to
Thank
thank
you.
you so much for being part of this. You're just lovely, just
I
lovely.
hope one time we'll be able to meet in person, maybe when I'm visiting Toronto next time.
I would like it, and I so appreciate your Torah, Michal. I really do.
Thank you.
You
Thank you.
you
I
studied.
love when people, I don't use the word love a lot because people say, I love tuna, I love sushi, I love swimming. No, you don't. I mean, Dr. Tversky says you love yourself. So you say you love steak. I use the word very limited. Actually, one of my kids the other day said, you know, Mom, if you say that, you really mean it because you don't say that often. I said, oh, wow. It wasn't about my child. To my children, I tell them all the time. I love Torah. It teaches you morals, ethics, clarity, compassion. If you don't have it in your life, it's hard to say this, but you're lacking something as a person.
Yes.
So I'm grateful that you appreciate it because it makes me very happy.
Very much so. And would you say you love God?
I try to love God.
What does that mean? You try.
Like what we said before, loving God is the highest level of divine service. Rashi to Deuteronomy 6:4. And you shall love the Lord God with all your heart, with all your soul, and with all your resources. So Rashi says there, you can't compare someone who serves the Almighty from fear to someone who serves from love. I don't know that I can say I have reached the level of Ahavat Hashem. That is for the greatest righteous, Rabbi Akiva. I'm not there. We're always working. We're a work in progress. I can't say I have achieved the highest level of divine service, which is love of God. So I can say I'm trying to love God.
Do you have dialogues with God?
Do I talk to Hashem?
You have dialogues with God.
Sure. I think I have monologues with God.
Yeah, monologues. Okay. Yeah.
Yeah, of course. Who does it?
A lot of people.
Oh, yeah, that's sad.
Yeah, a lot of people. They can't connect. They don't understand what it means to have, call it a monologue, call it a dialogue, whatever it is. They don't understand what that process is. I have challenges with that myself. Yes.
I told one of my kids the other day, I woke up in the morning and said, Hashem, what can I do for you today?
It's lovely. It's lovely. Michal, thank you very much for being here.
Thank you.
I really appreciate it. A wonderful job. And I encourage everyone to pick up her book. It's really well written. And it's a very interesting synthesis between a memoir, if you will, an autobiography, and a safer,
It
a
really
book.
is.
Right. And you really brought the two. You synthesized the two very well, very nicely.
I appreciate that you appreciate that and notice that. Thank you.
Very much so. I also want to thank our sponsors once again, Fogler Rubinoff and Joseph Fried Professional Corporation. Their sponsorship allows us to continue bringing you insightful interviews and important conversations. Ladies and gentlemen, as my mother used to say, God bless her soul, Sei gesund. You speak Yiddish at all?
Very little. But I know what Sei gesund means.
How's your Hebrew? How's your conversational Hebrew?
Yeah, my Ivrit, Baruch Hashem, tov.
It's good. So Sei gesund to you, which means go in good health until we meet again. And it's been an absolute pleasure. Thank you, Michal.
Thank you so much. Thank you
Thank
so
you.
much, Avram.